No, if it isn't episode 3 of the Travoltathon.
That is one episode more than our last podcast, the Strand Corp podcast.
And it's one more than those corporate shills that the Let's Talk podcast could ever handle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Luke Harrison and Tom Walker. We're talking to
Eat
you,
this.
motherfuckers. Eat my finger.
He's really, really rad.
He met Proop's dad.
You'll know him from Greece.
He's 5'11".
Allegedly.
It's Proop N Murph's
Travoltathon.
Pooh. All right, what are we talking about today? Which Travolta film will we be jumping into today?
We just watched The Fanatic 2019.
Piss.
This is a bad movie.
Okay.
How about you, Murph?
Well, I was surprised how much I enjoyed this movie.
Really?
I think I liked it more than Gotti.
I did not enjoy this movie. This film is the love child of Fred Durst and John Travolta, an unlikely pairing.
Fred Durst, of course, is the front man of Limp Bizkit.
Keep on rolling, baby. You know what time it is.
You can really tell it is a very
Because he
Dursty
listens to
film.
Limp Bizkit in the film.
Yeah, the whole film in general, it's just kind of born of Fred Durst's fear of autistic people. And I don't know if it's supposed to be a comedy or it's supposed to be taken seriously or a bit of both. It's so uncomfortable that I don't want to laugh at it. And I did not enjoy the film.
I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum because I thoroughly enjoyed the film. Sort of Michael levels enjoyment of this one for me. It's certainly, in terms of its technical aspects to it, it is very sloppily done. And John Travolta in this movie is awful. He is giving an awful performance as an autistic man.
I am just perplexed that John Travolta would choose to take this role after what happened to his son. Because it is a very...
didn't even think of that.
Well, it's like some stereotype of an autistic person. I mean, it's not like too unrealistic, but it's kind of framed in a almost comedic way. I don't know if it is intended to be like that. I didn't find it funny, but it seems to be in like a comedic sense. It's kind of like taking the piss out of him.
Well, I am not an expert on Scientology, but as far as I know, their opinion on the mentally ill and those with cranium disabilities is that they think it's sort of like a hoax. What they think about these disabilities is a very like Victorian type of sentiment. Like we say in the intro, John Travolta's son didn't get the medication he needed because they didn't allow him to in Scientology.
Allegedly.
Dandruff.
Let's give a general synopsis of the film The Fanatic.
Do you want to do that, Harris?
I'd love to do that, Ethan. It starts off in the middle of San Francisco. It's sort of got a Gotti type beginning where it focuses in on the setting. Like Gotti has New York, greatest fucking city in the world. This has San Francisco, the city of psychopaths, or something like that.
It's Los Angeles. It's Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
City of bullshitters, she says.
That's it.
Los Angeles. I call it the city of bullshitters.
It's been narrated by this woman, which is very strange because we don't actually see who this character is until a good 15 minutes into the movie, and it is his supposed best friend. She's like 20 years old, and Moose is like 50. He's a disabled man, and he is obsessed with Hunter Dunbar.
Hunter Dunbar is an actor, a TV film actor in the film. The film begins...
It does.
The film starts off with this quote from Hunter Dunbar, but because we've not been introduced to this character, we just kind of assume that it's a quote from, I don't know, some obscure celebrity or something. But no, it's a character in the film.
Mm-hmm. He says that quote later in the movie. It's sort of a spoiler.
I think it's very stupid to quote your own film at the start of your own film. You've invented a quote here that's not a quote and presented it as if it's a quote. You're only going to understand that if you rewatch the film. I would never want to rewatch this film.
I only know of one other film that quotes itself at the start of itself, and that is Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
I think that is the most rewatchable film in the Travoltathon so far.
What is fucking wrong with you?
Moose goes into his mate's shop and he says he needs a poo.
I can't talk too long. I gotta poo.
That's his first line in the film. His first line is "Can't talk too long. I gotta poo."
Great line. The
Which is
first
pretty
thing you
funny.
hear from our main character, and then he buys a jacket that Hunter Dunbar wore in a movie with the intention of it being signed the next day at this big event. But when he goes to that event, Hunter Dunbar goes outside to meet with his ex-wife, and he doesn't get anything signed. And Moose does not like that, so he's like, "Please, Hunter Dunbar, you got to sign my jacket." And he's like, "I don't care," and he pushes him over. And then it just spirals out of control, and shit hits the fan. Shit hits the fan attic. Am I right?
So his friend gives him this celebrity house tracking app. Basically, his friend's like a photographer in LA. He does celebrity photographs.
And there's
Gives
just
him
an
this
app with everyone's address on it.
for some
Very
reason,
unrealistic plot device.
But I don't understand why this character, who knows how obsessed this guy is, would give him that and then be surprised that he would use it to find the guy's house.
This woman basically exists to give Moose what he needs to get from point A to point B to point C. She isn't really a character at all. She is just a device.
Moose's job is like a street performer where he dresses up as an English police officer,
Yes.
does a really bad accent and doesn't make any money.
Welcome to Hollywood. Welcome to Hollywood, where crimes are made of. You want to take a photograph with me? My mate Dave. Did you see my mate Dave? No worries.
But then there's this other guy who's like some crackhead street performer guy who's always abusing Moose, which I feel that was intended to be there for you to sympathize with what Moose would then go on to do. But the thing is that there's no correlation there. There's no correlation. I can see why that character would be there if it was for that intention, but it's not there for that. So
those two other street performers served pretty much no purpose whatsoever, and him being an English policeman also served no purpose.
Jack the Ripper!
It's like Fred Durst has seen films that are going for the same kind of thing as this, that do accomplish these things well, but just use the tropes of that without actually having the character and the plot build in the correct way. Just kind of use the building blocks of it and then not connected it together at all to just present like his fears about autistic fans. Do you know? Because if you're not having the lens of it's taking the piss out of an autistic person, then I don't see how it's supposed to be presented in a way, because any kind of so bad it's good humor would come out of
making fun of an autistic man.
Making fun of an autistic person.
Black bile.
They set up the character of Moose, who's played by John Travolta, in a way that you're supposed to sympathize with him, but then as the film progresses, it becomes much less of that. When it gets to the part where he's in Hunter Dunbar's house, anything that has been built for you to sympathize with this character goes out the window, I feel. And then towards the end, it's just a complete clusterfuck of just gory hijinks. It just becomes some strange kind of human centipede type shit. Like none of the characters, nothing that's been built matters at all. It's just shock value and not enjoyable. I think it's very interesting that it came out the time that it did, because it's come out the same time as The Joker, pretty much. And there's a lot of similarity to that film.
I looked up which one came out first, and it is The Fanatic.
The thing is, where The Joker had nuance and taste, the character of the Joker in that film, it was consistently focused around him, and you were supposed to sympathize with him the whole way through. Whereas this film does not do that. It builds like that in the first half, but then as soon as it gets to he's actually going off the rails and doing very creepy shit, all of that kind of character development goes out the window, I think. There's this one scene where he's just killed the maid. He like pushes her over or something accidentally, and she's dead on the floor with all blood coming out everywhere. And he's like, "Oh, you've got a nosebleed. You might need to clean up your nosebleed."
That's a nosebleed. That's bad. That's bad. I had a nosebleed. It wasn't fun.
Any semblance of trying to take this film seriously past that point is out of the window, I think.
I think in no way this is meant to be taken seriously, because if you do take it seriously, it is just an awful movie with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. So I think the only way you can watch this movie is to just put it on and occasionally laugh at John Travolta being an idiot.
I think the film intends for it to be serious because of the way it's shot and the score and everything.
Ball cheese.
I'm sure that Fred Durst has gone into this film thinking he's making a real masterpiece. I think that was his attitude towards Limp Bizkit as well. I'm pretty sure he thought he was making very good music. But whereas with Limp Bizkit, you're laughing at Fred Durst. You're not laughing at this kind of caricature of a mental illness. Do you know what I mean? I thought it was very interesting because all of the credits is Fred Durst. It
is a passion project of his.
Fred Durst, John Travolta, Fred Durst. Yeah,
he's the new auteur filmmaker. We're used to like written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. In the future, it's going to be written and directed by Fred Durst. There's going to be a Fanatic cinematic universe. Fanatic universe.
The film is based on Fred Durst has had like a crazy fan like this, some mentally handicapped person who's scared Fred Durst, and Fred Durst has kind of built this film, and I think it's just very revealing about his kind of paranoid fears of this happening. He's presented it in a way that is without irony, I think, of his kind of view.
I don't think Fred Durst is trying to like base this off of anything that's happened to him, other than maybe he has had an encounter with an autistic person before.
Axe body spray.
Hunter Dunbar in this movie, he's like a giant asshole.
That's the thing with Hunter Dunbar. He's presented as an asshole the whole time. So it's clear that the film doesn't intend for you to root for him. I feel like if you go from the lens of Hunter Dunbar is the villain, then it's ruined by the fact that you can't sympathize with Moose. But if you go from the lens of Moose is the villain, it's very interesting because you're seeing a person whose internal moral compass is good, but his actions are bad because he doesn't understand the world around him. As an antagonist, the danger is the fact that he doesn't know what he's doing is wrong.
He does awful things, but he doesn't know that they're wrong. But with Hunter Dunbar, he does do awful things, and he knows that they are wrong. If you are going to take somebody's side, it would be Moose, despite everything.
I think the narration at the end, when they talk about Moose again, that does make it clear that Moose is supposed to be the protagonist. You see, Moose's descent into this kind of depravity isn't something you can root with either.
You stop empathizing with Moose when he actually does kill somebody. He treats it like nothing's happened because he doesn't actually realize that he's just killed somebody. That is the point where it completely lost me. He has just killed somebody. Now what? Because I cannot justify anything he's doing from this point forward.
Yeah, the only justification is his mental illness. There's an interesting point to be made about that. If you establish a character whose motivation doesn't correlate with what they're doing, because that is a realistic thing. It's not presented at all well here.
There's no subtlety.
No,
very heavy-handed. There's no grace to it.
It shows that he's kind of abused in various points of his life, but it's not showing the way he's been treated, which has forced him to do these things, because the whole time it's just his obsession due to his mental illness. This has been his character from the start, being an obsessive, disturbed person, you know?
We do see one flashback. He is watching television. It's presumably something with Hunter Dunbar in it, and he is very young, and in the background you can see his parents fighting. But that is literally a 10-second scene in an hour and a half long movie, and it comes quite near the end as well. So we don't see where he comes from.
It shows no attempt of understanding what kind of goes into that kind of obsession. It would work if it was about what would build that obsession, but it's nothing about that at all. In the Joker, it shows the way he's treated by the men on the subway, and he's being beaten up, and he ends up in the situation of killing them. And it makes a lot of sense why those events would occur in that way and why that would lead to his character progressing like that. Whereas with this, there are bad things that happen to him from bad characters, but they're not at all tied to his obsession with Hunter.
Vaginal discharge.
You know what was really weird was the dream sequences. It's sort of set up to be the ideal scenario in which Hunter and Moose would meet. However, in the dream sequences, the roles are reversed.
Excuse me, Mr. Moose. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just a real big fan.
Well, I am pretty busy. But since you're a big fan, you can sit next to me.
I get why it's there to sort of be like, this is what Moose wants. But I don't understand why they have switched roles.
I don't know. It is very strange.
And the way they are shot as well is with like a giant bright light shining on them, sort of like a heavenly picture. There's so many strange choices.
Bone marrow.
Another strange choice was at the start of each act, you are shown a painted picture of what is about to happen. At the start, you are seeing him with the jacket before he buys it. Second act, you're seeing him strangle the other street performer. And at the end, you see him on the floor dead, which
But
is
then he's not
so
dead.
weird. I know, but
It
it's
is
still showing something in the future. Like those
Yeah.
cards or whatever, they are meant to represent what is about to come up. That idea is shockingly similar to something I'm currently studying in German at the moment, which Bert Brecht plays. So at the start of each scene, there is a giant screen that tells you everything that is about to happen. And another significant thing about his style of plays is that you can't empathize with any of the characters. So, bear with me here. Fred Durst is going for a Brechtian style of epic theatre, and it's truly way more artistic than any of us can comprehend.
I'm not really too well versed about this Brechter guy, Max Brecht Jones. I think if his plays are anything like this film, I don't think I would enjoy them either.
Athlete's foot.
There is a scene in this film which is pretty much exactly the same as Joker. When he first turns up at this guy's house and he's got his kid there, it's pretty much exactly the same as when Joker turns up at Bruce Wayne's mansion.
There's so many scenes that are almost exactly the same. Like his friend in it, the woman who kind of exists as a plot device, the other street performer, the police officer who's like trying to help him is kind of like the dwarf, I think. The scene where he gets bullied by the other street performer is just like the scene where he ends up shooting the guys on the subway.
How that has happened, I don't know. Whether or not somebody from the Joker left the production of it and was like, I'm going to make this, but I'm going to get the guy from Limp Bizkit to direct it.
Yeah, it's very strange that they came out at the same time, but I think it's because both films are just very derivative. I haven't seen the film The King of Comedy, but I've heard that it's very derivative of that. So I'm sure that they both just had the same kind of inspirations. Yeah, Fred Durst did not do that kind of genre any justice.
It didn't feel like a movie. It felt like, you know how SNL do like those fake trailers for fake movies? It felt like one of them from like 20 years ago when John Travolta was still popular, and also making fun of disabled people wasn't as offensive.
I think it's interesting that you say that, because if we look at Fred Durst's music with Limp Bizkit, it seems like the kind of music that you would write in order to parody the genre of nu metal. It sounds like a parody, and yet it is the thing itself, and that's the same with this film. There is this one scene where Hunter Dunbar is driving around with his son in the car, and he's like, hey kid, do you want to listen to some Limp Bizkit? This is who I used to listen to back in the day. And it's like, come on, Fred. Very Fred Durst indeed.
Right, hey guys, it's Murph here from the future as I'm editing this video, trying to find the clip where Hunter Dunbar says, let's listen to Limp Bizkit. Now, I actually didn't have any idea what Ethan was talking about when he explained this. And that's because the version of the movie that I watched doesn't have that scene in it. For some reason, there is a censored version which doesn't have the Limp Bizkit music in it. Alright, I just thought that was pretty interesting. Let's just continue the video. I'm pretty sure that one of the songs that Moose is listening to in his apartment is a Limp Bizkit song as well. I will say on the topic of music that I thought that the soundtrack was actually quite good. It didn't really fit with what they were going for. It sort of had like an electronic-y, dreamlike aspect to it, which certainly doesn't fit this, especially the second half where they're going for more of a horror tone. But I'm not sure if that was an original composition just for this film or if they used pre-existing music. Either way, I think that maybe added to my enjoyment of the film.
Tears.
It climaxes to this point where Moose has tied up Hunter Dunbar and he starts doing some really, really weird shit. It shows him dead on the floor with all blood coming out, but then he just gets up. That was a prank.
You were jinxed on.
Game over.
Got you pranked. It's a prank.
It's like,
and then what he does next is he pretends to come in with a knife. He's got like this Freddy Krueger type of mask on, comes in with a knife, but it's actually one of those fake knives where it retracts into itself. And then he pretends to kill this guy. And then he pretends to pour gasoline on him. Epic Sam Pepper prank.
You've been pranked.
I fooled Hunter Dunbar.
it shows that he's trying to prank him, but then it actually shows that he does stab him a little bit. Hunter Dunbar manages to convince him to untie him by having him imagine.
So long. It's like there's like 5 to 10 minutes of him trying to convince him to let him go. And then when he finally gets free, he grabs his gun, shoots him in the hand. Yeah, and you can see his fingers fly off. Very graphic imagery, which isn't present at all in the rest of the movie.
Very kind of cheap horror film shit. The exact thing I would expect from a Fred Durst. It's not really fitting with what's happened in the film, I guess, but at the same time, everything that happens doesn't build any kind of consistent tone. With something like Gotti, it's like the tone they were going for, but it's just inconsistent as it goes along. It keeps flip-flopping between things.
And a film isn't great when you start using Gotti as an example of something done better.
Yeah, anything that could happen in this film wouldn't feel out of place because the whole film has no place. And then it ends. He's walking along. He's escaped from the house after having Hunter shoot off his fingers with a shotgun and then stab him in the eye, but then not have enough ammunition to kill him. So then the police come to Hunter Dunbar's house, having been called by the gardener who finds the maid dead in the garden, who Moose killed. And then Moose is seen walking the streets, and then his female friend comes along and helps him. The only logical conclusion to that series of events is the police would realize that Moose had killed the maid and they'd come for Moose anyway.
Yeah, what they're trying to set up is that because What's-His-Face has got blood on him, when they come into his house and see his maid dead in the garden, the film is trying to say that they think he did it and he's going to go to jail for murdering someone he didn't kill. But if any of these police officers have any form of competence whatsoever, they'd piece it all together.
Yeah, they act as if
he's free.
The whole point of the film is that Moose is the winner here. I think the ending is very, very stupid. It's a very stupid ending.
And I don't understand why his friend even comes back to him at all.
First of all, it doesn't make sense. And second of all, it actually counteracts the whole aspect of trying to justify whatever Moose is doing. They're trying to show that he's lonely or whatever, trying to show he's in a bad place, whatever. That's not really the world that he lives in. He's loved and he has a good friend.
Ting, ting, ding, ting, ding, ting.
Do we want to do a brief review of Travolta himself in this movie?
I don't feel like the kind of portrayal of John Travolta as this autistic person is really that funny. I mean, I can see that his portrayal of it isn't too unrealistic because you do see with autistic people who are obsessed with like film and television, they kind of act like a bad actor themselves. And he did portray that in a kind of realistic way, which is consistent with autistic people that I've met.
It seems strange.
However,
I don't think that the realisticness of it is what matters, because no matter what, it is still offensive for this man who has no disability whatsoever to pretend to be autistic. None of it seems right, you know? It's like doing a bad impression. Yeah, not good.
In this, there is no taste done with it. It's not there for you to kind of sympathize with the condition. The condition is there to be like a spectacle. So I did not like Travolta's performance in this, even though I did feel like it was a decent portrayal of that kind of character. I just feel like the way that character was written and everything was not good at all.
I don't think he really suits the role. Well, ideally you would want to cast someone who actually is autistic, but if you were to do that, you would definitely have to change the script and the plot to make it so you empathize with him, because to actually have somebody who is autistic just be the butt of the joke and a laughing stock for 90 minutes would be arguably more offensive than just having someone pretend to be autistic.
I agree.
Blood.
What was it about this film that you enjoyed? Because you don't seem to hate it as much as I do.
Well, I just thought it was just an enjoyable experience. Like, I wasn't bored or anything. I am.
Yeah, it's certainly not boring. It's certainly not boring.
I will admit that it fails on pretty much every technical aspect. Acting, directing, writing. The fact that nothing fits together, nothing works. Sort of like in the way we both enjoyed Michael. I enjoy this. I don't think this is anywhere near as good as Michael, but I wasn't completely drained and bored like I was with Gotti.
Michael is like watching Fred Dibner destroy a chimney. It's he's doing his job. It falls down in a way that is satisfying to watch, you know. This film is like watching footage of 9/11. It's the same thing, except with the knowledge that it is something horrific is going on. And that's what this film is to me. It's something horrific going on in front of me.
Well, I guess, in a way, when 9/11 happened, everyone was glued to their screens because they were just so infatuated. They wanted to know what was going to happen. They were like, what the hell? I need to watch this. This is insane. This is a turning point in the world's history. I guess it depends how you feel watching 9/11.
I see what you mean, because the thing with Michael is I would not describe that as it's so bad it's good. I just think it is good. But I can see if you are going to enjoy this film, it is definitely under the category of so bad it's good. Every aspect of the film made me uncomfortable, made me either cringe or feel like this isn't right. You know, I couldn't really laugh at it. I've always viewed Fred Durst as someone to laugh at. This film doesn't portray Fred Durst that way. It portrays him as someone you just generally dislike.
That's because it's a Fred Durst movie. He has no sense of self-irony whatsoever. He sees himself as this godlike figure.
Yeah.
He can do no wrong. And he's right, of course. He can do no wrong. Another thing that I thought was quite noteworthy, when Moose says, Mr. Dunbar, I've seen all your films, I was just thinking, that's going to be us too in 2 years when we're on episode 60 of the Travoltathon.
Yeah, this film is pretty much a premonition of us in the future.
Yeah, you either die a Proop or a Murph, or live long enough to see yourself become the Moose. We'll go to his house, harass his children, like you were planning to do with Peter Rigby.
Overall, what are your thoughts of this film overall?
It's certainly not very unique. It's not done particularly well. The performances, the directing, the cinematography, the writing, all aspects of it are bad. Overall, I enjoyed it somehow. I don't know. I can't explain why I enjoyed it really. I think overall, out of 10, I would give it a 4.
I think the only thing this film showed me is that Fred Durst is a very up his own arse, arrogant kind of person. And any kind of thought that I had that Fred Durst had any kind of sense of self-irony going into Limp Bizkit or anything, it's completely gone out the window, because there is no way this film could have been conceived with the intention to be taken seriously, I don't think. Just the way that it is presented. And I think for Fred Durst to make this film is just an insight into his kind of paranoid mind regarding the mentally ill. So I think overall, this is quite a bad film. I did not like it. I reckon if I got drunk or something and then watched it again, I might be able to enjoy it in the same way that you did. So I would rate this one a 0 out of 10. I'm not giving it any bullshit to heads. It's pretty funny that we've come from a 10 out of 10 Michael to a 0 out of 10 The Fanatic.
I don't think that our ratings are what matters. What matters is our discussion about the film. And I think that a perfect £5 Michael and a £0, or if we're taking the average of both of our scores, a £1, I think they've both spawned a generally interesting discussion on some Travoltathon kino.
I am glad that I have watched this film, because it's just made me kind of re-evaluate my opinion on Fred Durst.
But none of our opinions on Travolta himself have changed.
With Travolta, my opinion of Travolta is just kind of confused. Why would you do this, Travolta?
He wants that money. He wants that Bald Travolta £5 from us.
That's he wants the £5 from us, and he wants
because that's what the Bald Travolta score is. That's how much money we are PayPaling him at the end of the video.
Yeah, well, that's been our review of The Fanatic. Let us know what you thought.
Don't forget to subscribe to Ethan Proofs.
And don't forget to subscribe to Harris Murphy.
Follow us on Code Academy at Proop N Murph. So until next time.
See you next time.
Travolta, shut your soapy face. Travolta, Travolta, good and bad displays.